Order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. We'll begin this with the roll call. And Mr. Esteban Serta.
Here.
Ms. Felicia Moody.
Here.
Ms. Maria Douglas.
Present.
Mr. Sean Glover.
Here.
And Ms. W.A. Gomez.
Here.
And Darrell Owens is here. And we have one board member that is going to be absent for today. That's Ms. Cruz Perez, Maria Cruz Perez. Okay. So first thing on the agenda is going to be public comments. And do we have anyone signed up for any comments on the agenda item tonight? Awesome. Okay. No one is signed up for comment, so we'll go to section 4, for our informational part of the meeting. And I'll throw it over to Mr. G.
All right, and we will have a presentation from Mr. Gavois and community members of the committee.
Okay, board members, good to be with you tonight. It's cold up here. It's 78 degrees when I left the house to come up here. It snuck up on me. Appreciate you guys getting together. What's the old adage, have we not planned for tonight, next week would have been a polar vortex or something, but since we did, now it looks like it'll be pretty tame. But we've got a lot to talk about, a big decision to make. These are always challenging, and the last folks that had to roll this around and talk about it was almost 20 years ago. So now it's on your shoulders. So hopefully we've got enough information here for you guys to make a confident decision, because you were certainly part of the process to get us here. But there's a lot of things that have gone on over the last several years. And as we make this decision tonight or consider it, I thought it was important not just for you guys to just reflect on it, but also those that might be watching this presentation later to understand that this didn't just happen in a vacuum. This has been an ongoing process in Kennedale ISDs, and you and the staff and the community have been a part of that process. So I want to take just a couple minutes to kind of talk about what has taken place. Of course, you know, over the last several years, the district has committed fund balance to address a lot of capital needs across the district. That includes almost $800,000 just in safety and security upgrades, both physically to your facilities, but also in training and support and equipment and so on to make your students and staff and parents on your campuses safer. You guys have also made a commitment of almost $600,000 to upgrade technology district-wide. That's the backbone that carries your data, it's devices, it's all types of things, it's training. At the end of the day, you continue to invest in that infrastructure to serve your students and your staff. And finally, you guys have dumped a lot of money back into your old schools, from roofs to HVAC, air conditioning, a lot of different components to your aging facilities needed to be addressed. And you've made a financial commitment out of your fund balance to do that, to the tune of almost $6 million. Now with that, you've continued to think forward. It's one thing to put out fires, it's another thing to look at some of the challenges that have surfaced with respect to new developments and multifamily, that kind of thing. What impact is that going to have on your student enrollment and therefore your capacity? But you made the bold step of implementing the realignment of your elementary grades to your early childhood center and then your 2 elementaries. We've committed a lot out of fund balance to address improvements to Arthur, and then we had the little pipe issue, which complicated things and broadened our scope of enhancements to that school, but they're well underway. We continue to address security at your campuses, specifically with the secure vestibule entries, and we've continued with our long-range planning efforts as you continue to address capital needs across the district. You might recall that we did send out surveys to your campuses, had quite a few responses, and had almost as many color commentaries back on the surveys of things that folks liked or didn't like about their respective campuses. But those were sent out and allowed your staff to look at virtually every space in each facility and identify whether things needed improvements and whether or not they were appropriate. And that was really the launching pad for us to go through and do our technical assessments. And that's where we went through and we looked at code-related issues, We looked at safety, we looked at egress, access, looked at the sticks and bricks components, but we also looked at educational adequacy in terms of how does some of the specialized spaces support programs in the respective campuses. And we put those line item budgets together, and then we came to you and said, give us some names. Let's bring some community members to the table to filter through this data, to look at the work that you've done to date, but also look at the potential for growth, the recent demographic study that you did, your current capacities, and your long list of capital needs, and get their feedback as parents, as taxpayers, as teachers, as just community members in terms of what they expect out of Kennedale ISD. And so that task force, the planning committee that we put together over the course of several meetings, went through that long list of needs, I guess is a good way of saying it, and began to prioritize those. They had an option to choose a priority 1, 2, or 3. We took those responses, we averaged them out, and pretty much everything floated to the surface as a priority 1 or 2. And the list was long. As a matter of fact, it breaks down kind of like this. I'm sorry. With those numbers, we went through and we did an analysis, knowing that you guys have been aggressive in addressing capital needs with your fund balance, which has tapped a big chunk of it, but you've continued to be fiscally responsible. So we provided some options back on what various size debt instruments what effect that might have on your tax rate. Turns out, because you guys have managed your previous debt, your existing debt very well, we could look at a potential bond of as much as $63 million with no tax increase to the taxpayers in Kennedale ISD. Of course, that list topped up just north of $106 million. So in the interest of considering priorities and other options, we had the financial advisor run numbers for 75, 85, 95, and that magic 106 million and change. And you can see off to the right what that tax impact looks like. If you guys choose to go with the entire 106,150,000, you're looking at just shy of a 10-cent increase in taxes. Now that's per $100 of taxable value. So when you take your property value and you take off your $40,000 homestead exemption, what's left, multiplied times that 0.0983, that would be your annual increase. In fact, when you break it down by various home values, this illustrates what your monthly and annual impact will be for the various sizes in bonds. So if you take the bottom line of a $106 million bond, you have a $250,000 house, you're looking at just over $200 a year, or about $17 a month impact to cover the cost of this bond, okay? Now these numbers were based on some reasonably conservative estimates of pretty much low growth in your taxable values and then flatlining after about 5 years, which you know, you've watched your tax statement, your values don't flatline. It also addresses a reasonable collection percentage in terms of your taxes. And a key component of this, which oftentimes gets missed, is for those who have a qualified homestead exemption of 65 or older, there is no tax increase. Your school district taxes are frozen. So, you know, some folks will say, well, my taxes go up every year. Well, the city and the county don't operate under the same set of rules that school districts do in the state of Texas. And so when they file for that 65 exemption, their school taxes, dollar amount, not the rate that they pay, but the dollar amount that they pay in school taxes is frozen. And so when we met with the task force, they said, you know, you guys, we can't necessarily, if this is right, we said pit one school against the other. When we look at the needs, we see them all as important needs across the district. And the way those needs break out is like this. We have proposed additions at Patterson, the junior high and high school. At Patterson, it's a new library. At the junior high, we've got a science wing addition that also has some computer labs and some multi-purpose spaces. At the high school, we have a culinary lab programmed out to support that component of career and technology education. We've also got a large space set aside for storage for fine arts and band. If you guys have been through the back of the auditorium, through the band hall, there is stagecraft and instruments and things stacked on in every hole they can find. And so getting that out makes those spaces much more functional. And then we've got an outdoor education facility planned as well, and I'll speak to that under other considerations. Then all of the campuses, you guys have seen the list. It's a long laundry list of improvements to just your data facilities. Everything from roofs to HVAC, paint, trim, flooring, ceiling, lighting, everything that will go to extending the life cycle of those facilities, creating more durable finishes so that they're less on your maintenance staff to try to maintain every year. But basically bringing those up to modern standards. That's about $97,930,000. We've got some other considerations as well. The junior high, you know, that the district has had a rough time trying to keep that field alive out there. And there's so many programs that could utilize that space if it was available and in good shape. So we're looking at providing turf for the junior high football field, as well as addressing resurfacing of the track, replacing the light standards at that facility. We've also got some upgrades to the high school, which includes the sound system in the Performing Arts Center. Great facility when it's built. It's an old analog system for sound. It doesn't work very well right now, so we're looking at upgrading to a digital sound system that will serve your kids for years to come. The multi-purpose facility has served many organizations and many extracurricular activities over the years, but that turf now is about as hard as carpet in my house. It needs to be replaced, and so we've included that in here. Likewise, the district took some lights off, I think, some old tennis courts to light that facility up. So we're looking at going in there with some LED lighting to brighten up that facility and maybe give it some more usable life throughout the day. There is some water damage in the press box. The roof is part of the program, but that water intrusion over the years has created issues with the paneling and the flooring in that structure. So we've included funds in there to address that. We've also addressed a program that continues to grow in Kennedale, and that's your outdoor education program. A lot of kids participate in that. A lot of opportunities for kids that may not want to go through football or band, but this provides an avenue for outdoor education and a lot of activities, so we've included a space in there for that as well. And then we've got technology devices. In the campuses side, we've got infrastructure and things like that, but based on the way the law's written now, devices need to go in to a separate proposition. So those are set over in another consideration category. All told, that's about $8.2 million. So we're at $106,150,000 for it all. We had good turnout for most of the meetings. You guys were, I think most of you were at the meetings. Great feedback from parents, teachers, and staff. Toured a couple facilities. As a matter of fact, as we get to this point, there's a couple committee members here tonight that might want to address you and tell you their thoughts on the process and where you're at, and what they might like to see out of Kennedale ISD. So I'll turn it over to you guys if you want to speak briefly.
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
Do we need to go up there, or?
Oh, you got it.
Yeah, so it could be.
Hi, my name is Laura Simpson. I've got kids at the elementary school and the junior high. I appreciate y'all opening up the committee meetings to us community members. It was very informative. I learned a lot of helpful information to kind of help put everything in perspective. I know we talked a lot about like all the different improvements. I think everybody kind of knows that there's a bunch of improvements that would really help make Kennedale great and improve our district. And all those items are expensive, and a bunch of us at the committee, I think we all kind of overall consensus, we kind of agreed that, you know, that 106 magic number, we really needed to try to make that happen. That was really important for our school and for our kids. So I think that was a general consensus. And we also talked about that the school budget does not have enough money to pay for those kind of improvements, so the bond is the way that all schools, not just what Kennedale would do, all schools need that to be able to fund those type of improvements. And like he was saying that, when he explained like how the bonds work and stuff, that overall to each of us residents, I mean, I know everybody's, fixed on how much is this gonna cost me, which that makes sense, because, we're gonna be responsible for helping pay for that, but in all the grand scheme of things, when you break it down by month or by year, it was, between $200 to $300, on average per household for the whole year. So to me, I mean, I hate to admit it, but I probably spend that much at Starbucks, so I could easily cut that out if it's gonna be, doing something great for our students and for our kids that, are gonna be our future. And I feel like it's very important to invest in that. I think a lot of parents are on the same boat, so hopefully, everybody can get the same information. Let's see if there's anything else I want to say. I think that was my main points. I mean, and again, I appreciate y'all opening that up. Like, it was very informative to me. I'm a factual person, so I like to hear all those details. So, I mean, I'm definitely on board and willing to help spread information and reach out to our community members.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I have a question. So in the beginning, thank you for your input. I appreciate that.
Yes,
But
Ms.
it wasn't on the public comment, so how do we document our speakers? Is this
It's part of the
as part of his
presentation.
presentation? Okay.
They're part of the information.
Can we get your name and,
Oh, mine?
Laura
Yes.
Simpson.
Laura Simpson.
Ms. Simpson, okay.
It's Lora, if you need my first name.
Yes. L-A-U?
Lora.
R-A, okay. Okay,
Ladies and gentlemen of the board,
yes.
Can we get your name? sir?
Yes, can we get your,
And address, please.
my name is Andrew Bisco, former board member, longtime member of the community. I have two children have went through KISD as 13-year seniors. They have been provided their education and given the resources they needed to succeed. I have one that is, well, actually I have two of them that have graduated from college. The youngest one is going back for a second degree. Part of that is having the facilities and having things that they needed while they were in Kennedale ISD. Looking at the list of things, it is long, but I believe it is necessary to make sure that the kids have not only facilities, but also the equipment they need to succeed. I have been a volunteer on a number of different things, from basketball at the NBA level down at the elementary to a band ed at the senior level. Most of these facilities, most of the new buildings, the youngest building, complete building, is the high school, and it's 20-plus years old. We need to make sure that the maintenance and everything like that is taken care of. We also need to expand some programs. As he said, the outdoor facilities is needed. I just want to give as many kids as possible every opportunity they have to enjoy their time at KISD and to give them the tools to succeed after they leave KISD. Because they're still in our community, they're still going to be around, they're still going to be living in our neighborhoods. So give the kid that, may not want to play football, give him an opportunity that they have something to do that will give him a chance for a better opportunity in life. If he wants to be a cook, if he wants to go to school on a fishing scholarship, give him that. So these facilities or these upgrades and these changes, I think will help KISD, and I think that's something that you guys should consider, and hopefully you'll consider the whole $106 million, which is a big number, but I think it's worth it. So, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, board. My name is Andrew Malkowski, and I was also participated in the meetings that we had to look at the facilities and kind of really assess the needs of really substantial investment into any of our schools was 20 years ago. Anyone who owns a home, you can't expect to not invest into your house for 20 years and expect everything to be the best quality. So, looking at how long it's been since we've really had a substantial investment into our schools, looking at 106, I actually think this number is kind of low, in my personal opinion. Everybody might not share that same opinion, but we need to invest in our schools. We need to bring them up to the best condition we can bring them up to. We need to add we need to bring up some of the programs that the spaces aren't adequate. We went through, one of the places that we toured during our visit at the high school was the culinary arts system, or the culinary arts center. And it basically looked like kitchen ranges. It was kitchen ranges with, range top hoods. It wasn't the stainless steel kitchens that is preparing kids to be able to exit high school and go and actually work in a kitchen. And that's what we should be doing for this school. We should be preparing our students so that when they leave, they're able to move on successfully to whatever their next chapter may be. And so because of one of the things that really stuck out with me on the culinary thing was that because of the way that the system, the way that lab is set up, is that we're not actually able to give our kids that graduate through that program certificates so that they can utilize that in the real world. So all of these improvements, they're definitely necessary. I think we need to make these happen as soon as possible to bring up our schools, to make them look the best that they can, and that our children can actually have the pride that they need when they walk through these schools and when their parents walk through the schools. When we drive down the street, we see that this is a great campus. This is a great community to be a part of. Thank you.
Thank you.
So as we talked about at the last meeting, I know it was a struggle for some to consider everything, but the thought was, is this gonna all happen at once? And the reality is it's not. It's going to be addressed over the course of several years, which will allow us to issue that debt as we need it. A couple of good comments came out of the task force, one about air conditioning. The worst thing we could do is go out and spend $15 million on air conditioning in the first year, and then 20 years from now, you're faced with that same, albatross to deal with. And so we'll look at an implementation campus by campus over the next 3 to 5 years so that you guys then can effectively budget for hopefully those improvements down the road. So we took that into account. We took the tax impact numbers, and then we shared it all with bond counsel, who works with the guidelines set out by the legislature on what's this thing gonna look like. And we've actually come up with 5 propositions, which from experience is a little troubling, but it's the way we have to break things out now. So the basic improvements that we propose district-wide to address all of your aging equipment, aging finishes, that type of thing, is Proposition 1 for $97,930,000. Proposition 2, upgrades to the Performing Arts Center sound system is $345,000. Proposition 3 addresses the athletics component, which is turf, track, lighting, and then the press box at the high schools, the turf, track, and lighting at the junior high, and then the press box at the high school. It's a little over $3.1 million. Proposition 4 is technology for devices. It's $330,000. And then Proposition 5 falls under a recreational type setting because it's somewhat curriculum, more multi-purpose, but not for seating over 1,000. I don't know what late night negotiations led to that category, but it does address lighting and turf and multi-purpose. purpose as well as the new outdoor education facility, and then replacing the turf at the high school baseball and softball field for $4.395 million. Now, I know we've had questions throughout the meetings and talking with Mr. G and just doing this in other places, questions come up like, well, hold on, really, $330,000 for technology, can't we just buy that? $345,000 for the sound system, can't you guys just pay for that? I've watched you guys over the last couple of years struggle with every penny that you're gonna take out of your fund balance. And if you combine those together, you're over, you're $675,000. That's a big chunk of change to come out of your fund balance. The reality is, and this is why we have to separate these into separate propositions, is these things are typically issued to a debt instrument for shorter periods of time, for anywhere from 3 to 10 years. So it's not like we're gonna buy Chromebooks and finance them for 30 years or 25 years. We're gonna issue a different term for those bonds, so we pay those off more quickly, consistent with the life cycle of the devices that you're purchasing. But by statute, this is how we have to split this thing up. We went ahead and set this up based on the consensus that we felt like we got from the last meeting for the 106.50. So you've seen the tax impact. This is where we're at. Moving forward, shared this with you, I think, at the last committee meeting. You know, we've continued to finalize our budgets to get to this point. Ms. Williams has done a great job working with city and county officials to identify the specific legal components that need to go in the resolution for you guys to consider. Everything from early voting dates, locations, times, all that has to be identified. We've shared that with bond counsel, who has prepared the resolution for you to consider tonight. February 17th is still the drop dead date. We're calling an election for May of this year. Been working with Mandy to establish some information strategies on how we're gonna get this out. I know it's hard because you talk to people that I had no idea y'all were doing this. That's always the case. The work starts now on how we disseminate that information out. And we're working on strategies to do that. We're working on I call it a speakers bureau, where Mr. G and I, and of course you guys are welcome to attend a number of community groups, homeowners associations, that type of thing, to speak to them about exactly what we're trying to accomplish for Kennedale. We've got the last day of April 6th to register to vote. If you want to put your 2 cents in on this election. Early voting is from April 24th to May 2nd, and the election day is Saturday, May 6th. So that's the timeline. We're well within it. Tonight is before you, I think, a resolution to consider the proposals and the propositions as listed. Those can be edited if you'd like to do that. But happy to answer any questions.
Something, open to the board, see what questions that each board member may have that we can go ahead and shoot at them and get answers for.
I have a question. So I know we have a budget for the items that we want to purchase, replace, repair, or just build. But you said it's going to take multiple years, right? Several years. The budget that we have now, it's going to increase just because of things like materials will increase. What are we doing to make sure that we'll still be able to purchase the items that are on the 5-year mark, the 6-year mark, and still stay within budget?
We incorporated those inflationary factors into our estimates. Some of the sheets that we passed out over the meetings, you'll see that we included soft cost in that. Part of those cover the fees for your attorneys, geotechnical, construction materials testing, architects, engineers, all of that. We've got furniture, fixtures, and equipment accounted for in there. We've got a contingency component. The numbers that we put in there for the base cost are actually our projection of what it looks like they're going to be in about May, early summer of 2024, because that's probably when we'll be bidding some of the largest projects. Past that, we've got our inflationary factors incorporated into the budgets to deal with just that type of thing.
Make sure I think I've got this, but I want to make sure that I've got it correct. So it's about the 65-year-old cap. So you're saying, if I understood correctly, it's the dollar amount that someone is paying.
Correct.
It's not the percentage of the tax
Correct.
that they're paying. So if they're paying $1,000 in taxes, even with the bond, it will still stay at, if you're 65 and over, at $1,000.
On your qualified homestead exemption. So if you're a land baron and you have rental properties all over town and, you know, things like that, those are going to continue to escalate based on your value. But the key component here to understand is the district can only tax what it takes to pay off the bond. And so you've been very, I'm not gonna say creative, because a lot of districts have done that, but you've held your tax rate steady, which has allowed you to collect a little more money, but you can only use that to pay on the debt. So you bought your debt down early. So the options are to continue to do that, maybe do a blend of dropping it a little bit to ease the burden on your taxpayers, or you just continue to keep it in line with your values. So as your values go up, your rates go down. And the amount that you pay in school taxes would decline. But if you're 65 and older for your homestead exemption, the dollar amount that you pay in taxes is frozen.
And it's frozen from the time you turn 65.
So when you turn 65, there's a form you fill out, and they lock you in at that for your school taxes. Because you've got, what, 10, 12 years before that even gets there?
I felt like I made it last week.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. The first one is, for the impact for the taxes, it's an additional fee. So if your taxes,
Correct.
we'll go with the $250,000. It's an additional 206, correct?
Correct, a year.
Okay. And then with the bond planning schedule, information to the bond council, who is that? Who's the bond council?
Mary Claude, I have her, if you want to talk with her tonight, I have her on call. Her name is Kristen Savant.
There's several
Yeah.
bond attorneys that work specifically with school districts and municipalities to help them with the legal documents associated with bond issuances. It's not your school district attorney. They work hand in hand with your financial advisors that run the numbers, so that they can coordinate and make sure that the appropriate items are put in the appropriate propositions, and that the legal language in the propositions meets the state statute, because that's all got to be submitted to the Attorney General for review and approval. So, they're
So the company,
specific to that.
it's Faircloth something, I can't remember the name of
Okay.
it, but they work with Hilltop Securities, which is Jeff Robert, who did the presentation at the one meeting.
So he's a part of that company.
No, he's with
No.
Hilltop Securities. He's our financial advisor. They're bond counsel that they utilize.
Okay, then let me go back to the city, county officials. That's just to deal with the election.
Correct. The statute requires you to coordinate with your local city, which has to coordinate with the county, so that we, back in the day, a school district could have a bond election every 62 days. You could have them in February, you could have them in August, you could have them whenever you wanted. The legislature changed that, said you can only do it on the 2 general election days. Well, then they've changed it further and said you can't go out and do your own election. On the general election day, you have to coordinate with the local government entity to have your election. And so that's why we've coordinated with, or Ms. Williams has coordinated with Travis
Tarrant County will be
Tarrant County
coordinating.
to get that done.
And then the election order, it would be the only thing that we're deciding at the next meeting? No. No, this says
That's on the
February
agenda for
17th.
today. The 17th is the deadline. That's the drop dead. If you're going to consider an election for May of 2023, February 17th is the drop dead date, and that's a Friday. And so anticipating the possibility of getting frozen in next week, we're going to consider on the 16th. We're a little concerned about that, so that's why we moved it up to today to consider.
I have a question on the sheet that is down for that really spells out, it's not in the presentation, it's in the board book, Proposition A, B, C, D.
Correct.
Okay, some of those make perfect sense, you know, Proposition B, sound system for PAC, that is what it is, right? Proposition D, technology, it is what it is. Even Proposition E, we've added up what we think for the softball fields, the baseball fields, added it up to our lump total. However, Proposition A talks about school buses, vehicles, school facilities, and it also includes verbiage about purchase of property that might be necessary. And so I know that we kind of threw out in the discussion, hey, sometime in the future, we may have to look at purchasing property, but how does that go into Proposition A? What portion of that is delineated for what parts of that, in that proposition?
So, I won't profess to be an attorney, I'm just an engineer. But what the legislature has established is that standard clause. What districts have done in the past has said, Proposition A, $20 million new elementary school. And they build that elementary school for $17 million. And they got $3 million left. And it turns out they probably could have added on something at the other elementary to help with growth, but that money can only be used for that elementary school project. The rest of the money has to go back against the debt. What this allows you to do, it gives you the flexibility when we get to the end of this and we haven't spent all 97 million and you have some money left over, it allows you to address other needs that may have surfaced around the district. In order to do that, that's where you get all of that additional language in there. Let's say we do need another junior high campus or another elementary campus, you can use that bond money to purchase that property. Gives you the option, it's not required, you can always come back and say, hey, we saved money, let's buy down the debt. So it just keeps you from getting into the position of specifically defining every dollar that's gonna be spent. Kinda like when you pass your budget, you probably do it by function, not by code. So throughout the year, you can move money around within the function to cover your costs. That language allows you to do that. Is that clear as mud?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a standard paragraph, and most of that verbiage is in every proposition, all of your propositions.
Yes, and the attorney, she's pretty adamant, don't try to change language on it. This is standard language, and
When
she's
you scroll
been,
down through the resolution, you'll get to what it's actually gonna look like on the ballot. It's a much more condensed paragraph.
yeah, there's two sections where it's written. The one is what the ballot language, because you can't put all of the other stuff on a ballot because it won't be able to fit. So, yeah, the ballot language, which is the section 6, and then you have the,
Just scroll down a little bit further.
I remember us talking about that in meetings, and to me, I read it, Maria, as an addition.
As an
So, 'cause-
addition?
Right, because the category says district-wide additions and renovations, so if they have to fall within these specific categories that it was mentioned, if we're gonna be adding, you know, whether it's the science wing or, you know, all of the additions, if it's a property, that would, for me, fall under an additions category, is how I was reading it.
Well, and remember the presentation, he showed the two categories. One was, this is the stuff you normally can pay for, and it's addition, renovation, blah,
Right.
blah, blah, school buses, that type of thing. But then they changed it now. Extracurricular fine arts have to fall in their own
Separate,
category.
right.
And so what they try to do for legal purposes is include as much as possible in the legal language to give you the latitude to address surprises that might surface down the road.
and that's what I want to stress. Section 1 of this order that's the legal definitions. And then when you get to section 6, that is what the bond language which should be on the ballot language. Sorry, the bond language will be on the ballots, so, because it has to be more concise.
Section 6 under
Page
4A, right?
The proposition.
On the
For the
5A.
proposition.
Under 5A,
5A.
okay.
5A.
Because I want to read what you're.
The longer packet.
Okay, while
That
she's
will be the
looking that up,
addition.
I have another question. So we are the current board, and if this goes through, a future board will look at this and say, or correct me if I'm wrong, lighting, this amount was set aside, it might have gone up, it might have gone down, we decide we're fine, we can see in the dark. They have the levity to say, we're not gonna do this, we're gonna do that, or this is it.
Okay, so we're going to try and paint you into a corner,
Okay,
okay? This is a legal document that you will consider tonight. What I will work with your staff on is an information strategy. And what the courts have ruled is when you prepare those pamphlets and you say, wow, we're doing all of this at Delaney, we're doing all of this at Patterson, and then you decide, you know what, Patterson's in pretty good shape. We need an natatorium. Let's go build a natatorium. Can they do that? They can, but we're gonna have so much in writing in terms of the detail of what we're trying to tackle at each campus, because people are gonna ask, how can you possibly spend that much money at Delaney? Well, we're gonna show you. We're gonna have that laundry list of needs as part of our information collateral. And what the courts have ruled is that, as much as this resolution becomes a contract with your community, and they will have legal standing if you go against that. And so we're gonna do everything we can to use that as our management tool so that your voters come, and we've actually put up billboards at campuses to show all the things we're going to do. And as we do it, kids go out there and we check them off, and folks get to see it. And that's gonna be on your website, it's gonna be in their face. And so that was a great question, because we've been the armchair quarterback after that train wreck has happened, and trust is lost in the community, and it's not a good thing. And so we're gonna tie you to it with how we prepare the collateral, because you've seen the laundry list, and that's how we're gonna present it to your community.
thank you.
So I want to be clear, this 5A, this one I'm looking right here, is going to be the verbiage that would be presented for proposition A, B, C, D. It's pretty lengthy. That's the verbiage that the community would actually be able to read when they're voting. Is that correct?
There's the legal, like I said, the legal
Section-
verbiage. But
section
the
six.
ballot, what's on the ballot is
Uh-huh.
section 6.
Section 6, Proposition A.
Oh, she was looking at the other one.
A little bit
This will be posted on our website, I mean.
It's in all capital letters.
What
Page-
section is
Page
it
4.
under?
Section-
Page
Just keep
4,
scrolling
Section
down
6,
on that
Proposition
document.
A.
Scrolling down on this one?
Yeah. Keep going.
It's the same propositions, it's just put in ballot language
you
as
want to-
opposed to legal language. So.
This one? No?
It looks like this.
Right there.
That's it.
Those are
It's
it.
all in caps.
Okay.
Everyone that says this is your
In caps,
property
okay,
tax
in
will
caps, okay.
increase.
I just want to read how the community is going to read it based on what I'm reading tonight would be more detailed to see the consistency of what the public would read.
Mr. G, you said this whereas would be posted.
The election order is posted, yes, it has to be posted in 3 languages. So after tonight, if you approve it, then we order it and we move forward, then it has to be done in Spanish and Vietnamese. So,
Okay.
and it's put on our website, and other areas posted,
All of it, not just what she's asking about.
all of it.
And Ms. Douglas, just back to Ms. Moody's question. To me, that the way that it's written is not very sexy. It doesn't really say a whole lot. And that's why our collateral is gonna elaborate quite a bit more on exactly what's included in that. Just 3 or 4 lines for 97 million just seems like we're getting away with something there. So the information collateral will share with folks what we're doing.
Mr. Gadbois, I have a question, maybe humor me if you will. I mean, we've heard from Ms. Simpson, we've heard from Mr. Mikowski, and also Mr. Bisco this evening as well. And I think most of us were all involved in this process. At some point, we went on tours and we've seen the things that need to be done. But the people maybe that come back and watch this and want to know how did we get here and all those things that they've just seen. If this doesn't pass, how dire is this? How bad? I mean, you said yourself, you've been walking our halls, you've noticed us and talking about all the pennies that we've been fussing over. How bad is it?
So that's a trick question, as I was someone earlier, I was in a board meeting last night, they're considering, the only way they can manage a $30 million bond is because they have a solar plant. They're trying to replace their elementary that was built in 1944. So think about that, a building that was never designed to be air conditioned, that's got beautiful little 580 square foot classrooms. But the teachers they get it done. And I say that to say, your staff, they get it done. Now, are they handicapped? Your poor guy that does the outdoor education, I don't know how he takes it down and sets it up somewhere across the district, in the same day 3 times, but he does. Your science teachers are making it work with the labs they have. Your band is growing like crazy and they're stepping on tuba cases. Is it the end of the world? No. But the ability to enhance that instructional environment is really what this has all been about. It's always been about instruction and programs. And so, Ms. Mode and you as a school board, every year they've compressed your tax rate, it seems like. And so that bucket of money that you had, you don't really get to choose how much you spend. They tell you how much you're gonna spend. You need 6 air conditioning units, where are you gonna find the money? And so, you've got a lot of forces out there that have challenged you. 1 is aging facilities, 2 is the budget process, and 3, it's just limited funding. And it's 20 years, as you said, since you tried to tackle this. So I don't wanna scare the voters and say it's the end of the world, but the truth is, this is such a big step, such a big investment in improving the instructional environment in Kennedale that it's sort of intuitive to me and intuitive to you guys that have been through the facilities. Now our job is to get out to the community and share with them as well. So it's not dire, but you are facing tens of millions of dollars in capital needs that you can't pay for through your current budget. It has to come with some type of debt instrument. And I'm talking air conditioning, roofs, building envelopes, ADA access, code-related issues, safety, security, the list goes on. The only way to handle that is through some type of debt instrument.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. So, are there any other questions that, did you have another one, Ms. Moody?
I do.
Okay.
So for the community presentations, you and Mr. G would be a part of that. And we're invited, but that's where we don't have any public relations.
So we've prepared an election protocol. I think Mr. G might have shared some TASB stuff with you. We put together something that's a little bit entertaining is not a good word, but it's got some good information. The bottom line is you, outside of a body corporate here, are a community member in Kennedale, and you can do whatever you want to do. When you get up and speak at Rotary or a homeowners association or something like that, if you're speaking as a homeowner or a member of your group, you're completely within your right. You have First Amendment privileges just like everybody else. What the courts have ruled is the superintendent is really the only person that's sadly an employee 24/7. So if you want to put up signs in your yard, you want to post stuff on Facebook, that's great. What you can't do though is if you have a KISD email address, you can't use that. Resources, time, and money. If you think of it in terms of those 3, that context of those 3 things, you're completely safe.
And do we have a PR team that's going to pamphlets and?
So, we
Okay,
are
so-
working with staff to develop a variety of information strategies to get the word out. It is quite likely that there will be a community group assembled that can be have a little more leeway in advocacy, a lot more than you or the district can have. The district can only communicate facts. The advocacy groups or political action committees can be much more proactive in how they inform the community.
So I do believe we're gonna be getting some do's and don'ts, correct?
You will
Yes.
be.
So you were sent a TASB document that basically tells what board members can, can't do. We are already starting to visit with staffs, going to tomorrow them know what potentially they can and can't do.
Okay.
Our staff is more restricted because of the laws that he's talked about, but I am very restricted in what I can do. So, but that's where the community group has to come into play.
I don't know if there's,
Any other questions?
So,
I don't.
anyone, Mr. Espon, Ms. Sturgis, do you have any more additional questions?
Thank you.
Ms. Douglas, are there any additional questions that you'd like to ask?
No, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Glover,
I'm good, thanks.
Ms. Villagomez.
I'm good to go.
Well, awesome.
I want to thank you and your staff and your community. This is, I know it sometimes may feel like it's rushed, but there's been so many hours put into this by your staff and community members, and it's been a joy working with you guys. This is a big decision, so, good luck.
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Mr. G, any more comments before we move to the next section? All right. And then we are down to section 5A. Business items of recurring action. I'm gonna call it a bond election.
Is there further discussion on it, or is there ready to move to motion?
No discussions? No questions? Requiring answers? Then I guess I'm ready to entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move to adopt the order calling a bond election to be held May 6th, 2023 by the Kennedale Independent School District and resolving other matters incident and related to such election.
Seconded.
So that is, motion made by Mr. Glovier and second by Mr. Surda. All in favor of said motion, calling the bond, let it be known by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And that motion passes. Thank you very much, everybody on this board. And I believe that is an awesome decision that we just made, and that our city will be better for it and the kids. Okay. I think that's the last item on the agenda.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Glovier.
I move that we adjourn this meeting and get up out of here.
I second.
On that stand, we stand adjourned.